Hello! In this video, I'll be teaching you the best way to use each exhaustion perk in Dead by Daylight to get the most value out of them. We'll start with the least common of them and work our way to the more popular of the exhaustion perks. Let's not waste any more time. Starting us off, we have Smash Hit, arguably the worst exhaustion perk in the game since it relies so heavily on the killer playing how you want them to for it to work. Smash Hit will give you 4 seconds of 150% movement speed if you stun the killer with a pallet. In my experience, the best way to get value out of this perk is to greed pallets until you're certain the killer won't respect and give you a stun. If the killer does respect, it makes your perk pretty useless since you probably won't be able to get a stun. Also, once a killer knows you have Smash Hit, they'll be a lot more likely to try to avoid getting stunned, so you can use this to your advantage and greed pallets even more. The best way to get value out of this perk is to mix up how you play, sometimes dropping the pallet early and sometimes greeding it. Next up, we have Overcome. This perk can provide a lot of value if used correctly. Overcome gives you an additional 2 seconds of speed after the killer hits you, giving you a lot more distance. My personal favorite way to use this perk is in combination with perks like Lucky Break and Bite the Bullet on a map like Larry's Treatment Theater to use the speed to lose the killer and heal yourself quietly. Aside from that, the best way to use this perk is to gain distance to a new tile. Loop around an area for a while, try and save the resources the best you can, and once you get caught out of position or run out of resources, take the hit and run to a completely new area of the map and use new tiles to keep the chase going for a while. The only major downside of this perk is the fact you can't use it while injured and you have to take a hit to use it in the first place. Now, a newer exhaustion perk, Background Player. This perk gives you 150% speed for 4 seconds when the killer picks someone up. I haven't gotten the chance to use this perk too much, but from what I've seen, the best way to use it is in combination with flashlight and pallet saves. Use the speed to make it in front of a killer or to a pallet if the killer is on one when they pick up a survivor. Aside from that, I haven't seen too much use from it, but it can be really helpful in getting around the map. Following that, we have Head On. Head On is an exhaustion perk that allows players to fast vault out of a locker after 4 seconds and stun the killer if they're in range. This perk can save other survivors that are in chase, or save survivors off of the killer's shoulder if they walk by the locker or pick up in front of the locker. The best way to use this perk is playing with at least one friend so you can coordinate going to a locker and having your friend loop them past your locker so you can stun the killer and save your friend from getting hit. Once you do it a few times, most killers will either avoid lockers or check them before you get the chance to stun them, so be careful with how much you use it and always pay attention to how obvious it might be from the killer's perspective. Now, for my personal favorite exhaustion perk, we have Balanced Landing. This perk gives you 150% movement speed for 3 seconds when falling from any object or hill in-game. This perk is very map specific because you need either a hole or a drop down of some kind to get any value out of it, although it can be very strong because most killers won't expect you to be running this perk. The best way to use this perk is after looping regularly for a while at a tile, try and path over to any drop off and get enough distance from the killer to fall off and let Balanced Landing activate. It'll give you enough speed to make it safely to another tile and maybe even baiting a missed swing from the killer. Next up, we have arguably one of the best exhaustion perks, Lithe. Lithe gives you 150% movement speed for 3 seconds after fast vaulting a pallet or window, making it extremely viable in almost every situation. The best way to get value out of this perk is to hold a bit of distance between you and the killer before chase starts, and get as much value out of the tile as possible before either vaulting a pallet or a window, or dropping a pallet. Once you vault, hold W to make as much distance as possible with the extra speed and make it to another tile. If you decide to drop a pallet instead, if you get a stun, you can vault into the killer and use the speed to get behind him before he recovers. Make sure he doesn't have enduring though, because if he does, then he'll be able to grab you off the pallet before you finish vaulting. If you don't get a stun when you drop it, it's best to loop into a window or downed pallet somewhere else so you can get your perk value. And now for the once best and now worst exhaustion perk in the game, Dead Hard. Dead Hard, after the new patch, allows you to dash forward and gain the endurance status effect for 0.5 seconds, basically letting you take a hit for free. The best part about it, it only activates after you get hooked, basically meaning you can only use this perk 2 times in one trial with these new changes. But if you do still insist on using it, the best way to get value out of it is to greed around a pallet loop where there's a high chance the killer could hit you, and then use Dead Hard to get to the pallet, so the killer either has to hit you while you're using Dead Hard and give you your speed boost, or don't hit you and give you enough time to drop the pallet. Also, if the killer is new, you can fake vaulting a window or a pallet and then use your Dead Hard into the window or pallet, getting the killer to hit you. But most times, they'll just wait out the Dead Hard then down you. Now for probably the best exhaustion perk, Sprint Burst. The most viable and easiest to use out of all of them. Sprint Burst allows you to run at 150% speed for 3 seconds when you start running. All you have to do is move forward while holding your sprint button or key, and it activates. You can avoid using it by accident by walking around when the trial starts, but make sure you're not just walking around the entire map waiting for a chance to use it. It's okay to use it early game to get to a nearby gen. A popular technique with this perk is to 99 your exhaustion. What this means is letting your exhaustion almost come back, then holding sprint everywhere you go right before it comes back, stopping it from giving you your sprint burst back. Then when the killer is close, you can take your finger off sprint for just a second, giving you your sprint burst back, and then use it to outrun the killer. Another very popular way to use this perk is to get on a dead zone generator, meaning there's no resources around it to use, such as windows or pallets. Then if the killer comes close, you can just use Sprint Burst to safely make it to another tile with a pallet or window. You can probably tell why this is the most popular of the exhaustion perks, although it can be hard to use efficiently. That's about it for how to use every exhaustion perk. I was going to include Blood Rush, but that perk pretty much just plays off of every other exhaustion perk, so I didn't see the need to add it. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. If you learned something new, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it